Welcome to the Esoerotic Dark Feminine Magic Podcast. My name is Crimson, creatrix of Esoeroticism, and I help mystically minded folks awaken their dark feminine magic. Welcome to the portal of enchantment. Welcome, Emily Rose, to the Esoerotic Dark Feminine Magic Podcast. How are you today?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here. This has been a long time coming, and in between when we were going to do it and now we have birthed or started to birth something really special. So I'm so excited.
Yes. So we had planned on doing this a couple weeks ago or a few weeks ago. And we, in that time, were able to record a podcast for your upcoming podcast launch, which we'll talk about. But we actually talked so much that we didn't have time to record this one, which was perfect because we have decided that we are going to unite in something which we will absolutely share. But first, I want to introduce you. I am sure many people are aware of you because you've taught within the multiverse. You have come and visited the Minx and Muse studio when we were in Austin. And so, and also you have, a very wonderful following in your own right. So for those who may not be aware of you, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. What's so funny is right before this, I grabbed a shower and I used the Trader Joe's coconut lotion, the coconut. You know what I'm talking about? You do know what I'm talking about because I only know that exists and is in my world because of you, because of when I visited you in Austin. And now just about every time I use it, I think about being in Austin with you. So
Yeah,
I smell like coconut and I remember that time.
I'm such a Trader Joe's hoe, but
Oh, same all day long, baby.
yes, yes.
Okay, so anyway, I'm so happy to be here. My name is Emily Rose. I am an embodiment, I like to say advocate, enthusiast, like constant study or constant student of embodiment. I specialize in somatic sensuality and erotic vitality. I'm also a mentor to creative visionaries like myself and like you. Yeah, that's where my love is right now. And this year in particular, what's coming back online for me in my body, in my heart, my spirit is writing and speaking and doing long form creative projects like writing a book.
Amazing. And something that you probably was rolled in there as like your capacity within it, but flat out say it. You own a studio in New
Oh
Jersey.
yeah, yeah. That's where all this began. I'm the founder of Thrive Embodied Arts out here in a tiny little northwest corner of New Jersey in Newton. Yeah, I was actually just telling someone a little bit of that story today of how I signed my lease on March 1st of 2020. And we know what happened 2 weeks later, and that now we're going on 6 years strong going into this year, and we have a literal thriving community that just continues to grow and feed itself. And in my area right now, I'm getting really curious about how that ripples out and how we can feed other types of businesses, communities, and stuff like that. Because I'm from a really tiny area. I grew up here. I know you're a Jersey girl too, but like way up here in the north, like shit, it's like small town USA.
You know what? I don't think people know that about New Jersey. This is totally an aside. I will
Mm-hmm.
always be a Jersey girl, but I'm a South Jersey girl,
Mm-hmm.
which is very different from North Jersey.
Yep.
South Jersey is a very Philly place. North Jersey is very New York, but it's the Garden State, and people do like. I grew up in like a very beach/farm town,
Yep.
and so much of Jersey is very small town, farms and
Yep.
beautiful nature, and it has a bad reputation sometimes. But actually, knowing that you had found such success with your studio and your work in a tiny little town in Jersey is actually what really gave me, I would say, strength to make the decision to move to an equally small and tiny, if not smaller and tinier town here in North Carolina, because what I saw is that this kind of feminine led, somatic, mystically aware work is needed everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it really gave me curiosity, having just lived ever since, I went to college. I always lived in big cities. And this is my first time returning to living in a town. And it is a big change, but it really gave me interest and curiosity around, like, what would it be to actually do this work in smaller communities?
Mm.
Because in cities, there is a more openness, and that's what I have found. And there's also probably more youth-based culture, and it was maybe not so hard to sell.
Yeah.
Everything's rearranging here, but what was your experience? What is your experience, I guess, being the first in your area to step into the realm of really feminine movement? Like, I don't even think there was a pole dance studio or anything like that, right?
No. So, wow. Well, thank you for that acknowledgement, because a lot of what I have infused into how I show up in my business and the things that we offer are directly inspired from you and from our relationship together. So I love that. It makes sense that we're rolling into this season of collaborating together in a way that's going to be so beneficial to so many humans. But yeah, so I grew up here, and my studio is in like the next town over from where I grew up. And I went to like Fort Town Regional High School, just to like paint the backdrop of like
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
happening over here. Okay. And that high school was literally across the street from a cow farm. Like we out here. Okay. What's funny is that you can still get to New York City in about 90 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, between 60 and 90 minutes, depending on traffic. So we're not far from a really obviously huge city, but out here is just such a different culture. So a couple things happened when I decided that this was the path I was going to take. Before I dove all the way in, it's so funny. I just posted about this today. I had my one pole in this gym that I worked at. I taught HIIT classes, like at this functional fitness gym. It had bright green walls. It was a gym, right? They had really cool approach to movement, a lot of knowledge and wisdom in there. I worked with a couple friends I went to high school with, but like it was still a gym. So I was like, oh, can I bring my pole? I'll teach after hours. And one of my first students actually is on my senior staff now. So we're talking 6, 7, maybe almost 8 years ago now too. So what I quickly realized in that environment is like what I was trying to cultivate in people, and my 3 students that I had at the time could not be fostered or nurtured in that like linear, sterile, not aesthetically like sensual environment. Like there wasn't, it had a ceiling. I did the best I could, but like we're moving on gym mats and it's bright green and it's just like it wasn't the vibe. And I even said to my senior staff member now, it's like one day I will give you, I said hardwood floors, but I meant like laminate floors so that we can like use our feet in a way that it won't be ripped up. Those thick mats, those
Oh,
like
yeah.
fitness mats? Yeah. So in that moment, I realized, okay, what I'm trying to do really, really deserves and needs the right environment. If I'm going to ask people to meet themselves in vulnerability and sensuality and sexual energy that comes with so much nuance and so much charge, I need to have them step into a space that already feels like somewhat of home, if not for them, for me, so that can eventually ripple into their systems too. And just like doing body waves next to free weights ain't it. It's
And
not it.
no, and you had the benefit of, you traveled and worked in
Yeah.
this realm. If you want to tell us just a little bit of backdrop, because you didn't start in a gym.
No, 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 no. Yeah, that's a good point. So we'll put a pin in that because the gym is
Yeah.
the last step before the studio. But
Yeah.
before the gym, before I landed in my hometown again, so we'll go back like early 20s. I went to college in New Haven, Connecticut. That's where I found pole the first time. And it's one of those things where I met someone and she taught there and I was like, I want to try that. And she was like, everybody says that. We'll see if you show up, basically. And I was like, bet. And I fucking booked that shit like the next day, dragged my best friend along, put it on my credit card, whatever. You know, I was like 22 years old maybe. And I remember that call with that owner. Shout out Judy from the Girl Spot, because I had all this physical background. I was a hardcore athlete. I went to school for cheerleading. So I like saw this like, oh, this is something I'm going to be able to just like do. And so when I called her, I was like, I'm a college cheerleading coach. I have all this background. I was teaching boxing at the time. She was like, no, you start at beginner. And I was like, but
How
why?
dare you? Oh yes, that is a
But
very
why?
prevalent thing in pole is
Yes,
when people start, well, I'm already strong. Bitch, you aren't
right.
doing pull-ups on a pole. Like it is,
No.
there's technique and there's nuance and it's a whole different
Yeah. And so what happened in that conversation was she very lovingly was like, this is not going to be like anything you've experienced before. And she
Mm,
was 100% right, but not in the way that I thought. I was like, oh, this is going to kick my ass. And it did.
right.
But what happened is it started to wake things up in my body that I had never acknowledged before, especially on my own, especially not with like a partner. Like the only time I had ever moved my hips in a way that felt like, writhy and like grindy was in the bedroom, or
Mhm.
maybe like at a seventh grade dance way back in the day, right? But we had these like church dances here. Oh my God, that's a fucking that's a
Scandal.
story. That's a story for another day. But yeah, it woke something up in me that was so new. But I still clung to the physical. The physical component was what felt familiar to me, challenging to me. It was kind of like a way that I measured whether or not I was quote unquote good at something.
Mhm.
So that initially is what kept me coming back for more, was that like, oh, this is a new thing to master, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I like, I started out being a hardcore pole junkie. I was there at that gym or at that studio like 5 days a week, open pole, you name it. I was there. Hungover, hungry, whatever. I was at pole class, you know? And so long story short, the owner said to me, "Hey, I think that you moving to the city to learn from this really renowned school, this like aerial arts school would be really beneficial to you." So I did it. I packed up my shit, moved to New York City. I lived there for 2 years. I studied at that school the whole time, and then I went through a really hard grief pocket. I lost my best friend randomly and tragically, and I just kind of looked at my life and was like, okay, life's really short. So I packed up all my shit. I sold everything that couldn't fit into a carry-on, and I traveled around and taught at any studio that would have me for like a week or two in residencies, and I'd sleep on people's couches and I take over their programs for a week. And then eventually, as best friends do, I call my best friend. I'm like, am I running away from my life? And she's like, well, do you think you are? And I'm like, you bitch. And so I eventually landed back home, back in this area that I had probably spent a decade and a half avoiding.
Mhm.
And on my last leg of the journey, I stopped at our friend's studio, and I didn't know her at the time, but talk about kind of this ripple effect. Like you meet people that constantly inspire you to move differently in the world. When I landed at our friend Nia's studio at Butter and Filth, I looked at what she had built. I looked at the colors and the lighting and the way people were moving their body, and I was like, oh, like this is what it's about. This is art. I can do art. I went to school for art. I want to bring this art to this sleepy tiny ass area that I grew up in. And so I did. So I did.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I do think, I mean, it was Body and Pole you were at, right? In New
Yeah.
York?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's I mean, they have a reputation of being like, in the United States, the creme de la creme of
Mhm.
training and instructors. And I know you worked with Tracy Kiefer,
Yep.
who also is like a beautiful soul and also bringing in like trying to strip away the masculinization of pole and bringing in the emotional feminine along with,
Yeah.
like you said, that is the cool thing of when you get really lit up about something, is learning from a bunch of different people and seeing
Yeah.
really, okay, there's not a monolith of what this has to look like, because you nailed it. Like, a lot of times, and we've had this conversation, people's entrance into feminine movement and embodiment is pole dance. And that was mine
Right.
as well.
Right.
And we've had so many conversations of like really how limiting that can be and how frustrating it can be to be pigeonholed into something that you feel like, oh, that's just a prop or a component of my greater work. But it has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I know that it sounds like you kind of, this is for anyone who maybe has not gone through maybe a sensual movement journey, or like their feminine expression journey quite yet. It tends to look like this. You're you're titillated, you're drawn in for some reason into it. And whether that is through like a sensual yoga or a pole dance or a whatever striptease, whatever class, whatever you find, and you are turned on because it's not your typical fitness or masculine movement class, but that's the only thing we have the vocabulary for, right? If I'm moving my
Right.
body, it's fitness. If I'm moving my body, it's got to be for some kind of gains, right? And so we enter in and then we completely masculinize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's our default. That's the only way we really are taught to engage with movement. Even ballerinas, you know, it's such the suffering and the oh my goodness, the physical discomfort and pain that you put you through in such a feminine perceived movement. And so that's what we default to when we beat our bodies up and we turn it into competition and performance, and because that's the only language we have around movement. And so a lot of us just stay in that realm, and that's awesome. But there comes a point where a lot of us, I know you did, was like, this is not why I started this.
No. Yeah.
You know? And so there's a big depth of reflection that comes from it. And we return to, okay, why was I originally interested in this? And that's where like a separate depth of exploration begins. And it sounds like that's what you ended up finding.
Yeah. Yeah. So since we're giving shout outs too, I want to circle back to a name that you just mentioned. So Tracy and I were like really close while I lived in the city. She became a really good friend of mine, and she was, but before that, I actually met her at the Girl Spot, and it was her, specifically her, that introduced me to the idea that movement could have emotional literacy as a component to it. Something she had taught. I think the story goes, I had paid for her workshop already, didn't know who she was, watched how beautifully she moved, and was like, wow, she moves like water, you know?
Yeah.
And I was still so young. I was still only in pole for a couple months. And I was just like, it was like a whole new candy store of like possibility, right? But I was still like, I'm going to stick to this physical candy that like I know works for me. Anyway, long story short, I had already paid for her workshop and I was going through a breakup.
Ooh.
And I was like, I do not want to fucking go to this workshop. I'm so sad. And my friend that originally introduced me was like, I'm pretty sure you already paid for this. Just get your ass up and come. And so in that workshop, she was just cueing different things. And I remember like she offered us contrasting words. And I think the word was heavy. And I was able to truly embody that in a way that I hadn't ever talk processed before, and just had the space to let it be kind of messy. And that moment too was a huge shift in me, because these things that I was feeling and experiencing, but wasn't able to like match the movement component, because I've always been like highly sensitive. I've always had a huge range of feelings, but I masked that for the first 2 decades of my life with physicality. And so to have a space where someone invoked or you know, kind of like had you rub up against the edge of like your comfort zone, that was pretty soul shifting for me too. So I wound up when I moved to the city, her and I became homies, and I wound up teaching alongside of her for a long time too. So just to give props where props are due, she taught me a lot about looking at things differently, especially from a movement component as well.
Yeah, the lineage. There are so many people doing really interesting things in this realm, and so it is it's good to shout people out. And it's so true that you would have never thought that this is why I'm doing this. And it's interesting. I stripped, we'll probably circle back to this, but for me, I had to strip the pole out of esotericism because
Mm,
it's going through a resurrection and it's really finding its essence. But you share that story. And I had an experience here. I have the Esoteric Temple on my land here in North Carolina, pole free, but very much still rooted in sensual movement and expression and dance. And I had a student come this weekend, and she had taken her first esoteric experience, a workshop I had offered a few weeks prior. And she said, I've realized that my therapist keeps telling me that I need to explore my emotions, and I never knew how. And I realized this is the first time I actually experienced being able to express emotions.
mm,
And this is the place where I realize I can do that. And like
yeah.
she had never, like, therapists will say, well, you have to sit in your sadness, or you have to move through your grief, or you have to just like not stifle your rage. But like, how, in a way other than that, is that, other than obviously sitting and feeling it, but there is a therapeutic quality to
Mm,
moving it through in dance and movement, and feeling it in your body without the in, immediate desire to disassociate. Because a lot of
yep.
times it's very hard to live in grief and have a job and raise the family and do all of those things, right? But if you have that moment in dance and movement somatically to actually like experience the grief and move through it, but also in like a way where you remaining rooted and in pleasure, there's this magic that happens, that it has the ability to express and integrate versus being something that you only have little space for and you're constantly trying to disassociate from. And you
Yep.
know what? A lot of us found our connection to movement through pole. And I think and a lot of people have kind of stayed in those containers, but a lot of people have moved beyond it at a certain point, but were able to root into what it was that they found in that, which was like a
Mhm.
liberation.
Mhm.
That's something like a what's it called, the dance fitness zumba, like a
Zumba,
Zumba
yeah.
or
Yeah.
something like that, just has that will never really get to that point. Like, I so applaud to the pole dance world for, I think, being our gateway into this greater potential, because I also come from a very sporty background.
Mhm.
And would be would be I think, if I introduced my work now to the version of me, I would be like, nah, that's just not for me. So we all need our gateway, right? But
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
not at the point where me speaking my words now would have resonated in, but that was 13 years ago. It's proof
Yeah.
of the journey. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm about 12 or 13 years in as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's so true. It's so true. But you know what? This goes to the business owners as well that listen to this. I think there's a part of us that always leans into that opposition, like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know that I would have, 10 years ago this would have been for me. But I think many of us that find ourselves in leadership, business, small business ownership spaces, we saw something that really worked for us or shifted something in us. And there was something we wanted to do differently about it.
There
And
is
that's why we landed where we are.
I always say it, like, you didn't start pole dancing because you wanted to get strong. You could do CrossFit. So recognizing, why am I being drawn to something? There is a
Mm,
tabooness. There is something that is turning you on about that is not accessed elsewhere. And you and I both integrate mysticism in one way or another
mm,
into our work. And for me, because it goes hand in hand, as you go into the depth of self through the dance and the movement, is like a depth of self soulfully. And so much of the work that I believe we're here to do is to just know thyself. I always repeat that over the archway at the Temple at Delphi. Know thyself. This is why I love astrology. This is why I love mysticism. This is why I love tarot and shadow work and all of that, is like to get to know ourselves at a distilled point that
Mm,
has been stripped away from external influence, whether that be how we were raised, how we had to survive in society, how we had to procure safety, but
mm,
also, recognizing that a lot of those are influences that are no longer necessary, protection mechanisms. And
mhm,
so what I love about the work you do at Thrive is that it is so atypical to a lot of the studios that you're going to find out there, because you have recognized the deeper potential of what you offer. And I would love to hear, how have maybe from when you started to now over the 6 past years, because right now we're our archetype of the month in eroticism is the resurrect itself. And
ooh,
we're going through, yeah, as a society, we're going through a huge resurrection. And I
yeah,
suspect that you're experiencing that. So, yeah, do you want to share that?
yeah. So it's interesting that you mentioned about eroticism and removing the pole, because something that I got really curious about even when I was traveling before I landed back home, before I opened the studio, was the things that were showing up in the rooms that I was teaching in. You know, the movement was there, and that's always going to be a valuable component that comes with anything that I do, because that's the alchemy and that's the processing to me.
Yeah.
And I was looking at these spaces and I was sitting in circles and guiding, and I was like, what happens if we took the pole away? You know, what happens? And that's one of the things I ask my mentee clients, especially. I have a lot of different a range of creatives that I work with, but a lot of them are studio owners and movement nerds like like me and you. um, and I ask them, like, if you were to look at the value of what you bring to people, the way that you teach, if you took the pole away, what would be there? Who would show up? What would be, the baseline, or the what would keep people coming back, just as a general like a exercise. And so I started getting really curious about that, because something that marketing wise likes to get thrown around in the pole world, and I already know people are going to come for me with this, so whatever, is that, that pole is for everybody. And that could be true if we took the care and put ourselves into a place of knowledge and wisdom and experience where we can tend to so many different nuances of body. But there's even people I can think of right now in my studio where that's not true. They're the mobility is like, it's not true for them mobility wise, it's not true for them health wise, things like that. So I started getting really curious about this sentiment that has like a lot of heart behind it, right? Like, we want to believe that's true. And is it harmful to say that? Because then who are we really not serving? And you and I can talk more about this too. So I'm like, okay, what would be here if the pole wasn't? And how can I serve people in a way that I have seen quote unquote success through using the pole, right? I always think about my one, like, there's a handful of clients I always think about when I do this exercise. But in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie, I used the straight up curiosity and the tabooness of the pole alone, which it represents, as not just a strategy, but that was where my love was still then too. So I was internally really curious about how to make things differently. But even though I had no fucking business knowledge when I opened this bitch up, like zero, I still knew that had to be at the center, that the pole had to be at the center, because it was buzzy enough to open the gateway, like we were just talking about. So yeah, in the beginning, even though we would like start in circle and we would do a lot of what people call woo woo, right? We could fucking talk about that shit too. But I would have these connection moments, these community forward moments before we would do a warm up or learn a skill. But that structure was still quite linear. You know, there was a beginner pole that was 4 weeks, and then there was beginner 2, and then there was mixed level 3, 4. And the more that I got steeped in how I wanted to help people learn about themselves and their sensuality and embodiment at the center, I realized that like levels don't really nurture embodiment. You know, they kind of keep us separate or in a very linear fashion of learning and growing, which is everything we're trying to dismantle. At least I know I am, and I think you are too. You know?
Yeah. And here, so I love this. And I'm definitely gonna, if anyone's listening to this and are in this world and have thoughts, like comment wherever you're listening. But here's where I am with it. So one, the poll is for everybody. Not the way it's taught in most places. You
Fair.
know, I
Yes.
think that there is definitely a possibility. However, the poll world is so really monolithic in the sense of like there is still a trajectory, there is an expectation of certain tricks and whatever. And so there are some really good I think there are some really good teachers out there that could kind of keep this in mind. Rosie Boa being one who I would also recommend, who's an online pole studio, who's really
Ooh.
into freestyle. Yeah, check her out. She's dope. And but you know, I always say I've been pole dancing for 13 years. I stopped inverting and tricking after 4. So,
Mm.
but there are very few people who would dance without having to progress. I think that there's a way to engage with the pole as a prop. And
Mm.
that's what I always really tried to return to at Minx and Muse. And even there, even though we didn't invert, we didn't trick, there was still this like, this desire to push the boundaries in terms of how physical can I get with this. And I have recognized that that is natural and that a lot of times we have to go through that cycle to then return to, okay, I've done that. Now, like I want to return to the essence. So I always wonder, what is the natural cycle that has to happen? Because you can't bring people from A to Z. You have
Mm-hmm.
to have them go through the experience themselves to say, okay. So with that being said, what I'm playing with right now is because you nailed it. Pole dance is one of the gateways into embodiment, sensual expression, feminine movement.
Yeah.
And if and for example, at Mixed Muse, that was the gateway. We got people in
Right.
through the pole. We also got people in through kind of like magical coven type classes, but we'll
Yeah.
return to that in a second. Now that I don't have the poles, I am playing with what is the gateway into my world, because there needs, just saying like we're going to start rolling around and awakening our sexual erotic expression, and it's a lot for people.
Scary.
So yes, there needs to be a more accessible gateway. I'm playing with like moon circles and femme
Mm.
circles and things like that as the gateway, but there needs to be something. And I want to take this in like a million different directions. I will say this is also something presenting itself in my magic and witchcraft, because what you said is, okay, I've gotten to the point where I want to strip away the superfluous.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I got. But I needed all of that superfluous to get to where I am.
Right.
And the same, and I'll liken it to magic and witchcraft, where it was like, oh my gosh, I need the candles, I need the
Yep.
herbs, I need the oils, I need
Yep.
this spell, all of this. I am also at the point where I am not interested in any of that. Like, again, I want to strip away the superfluous, but I still consider myself a witch and a magical practitioner, because I have distilled what that all allowed me. And that was my inner reflection and the awakening of my inner power. And to me, it's energy. And it's the dark feminine shadow reflection. It's the astrology as a study of the collective energetics. It's tarot as a term of like symbolism and inner awakening and recognition. And so that's the same thing that I went through with dance, where it's like, okay, really want the pole, like there's no need for performance, there's no need. So here's the question I'm going to pose to you. Is that
Mhm.
something you're experiencing as well? And do we believe that there needs to, do people really need all of those superfluous things to awaken to a certain point? And what do we do as guides when we're beyond that, but we know that, and we're not interested in it, but we know that that's kind of necessary to get to a certain level? And I'm not asking that like I have an answer.
This is such a good good thing to chew on, especially for fellow practitioners and guides and leaders out there too, because our clients constantly show us how we need to adapt and move. Like I always zoom out and look at the studio and use it as the heartbeat of what needs to be infused or created next, right? Right now what's happening, and this is true for me too, when I started the studio I was barely 30. I'm closer to 40 now than I was, right? So my body is changing and it has different needs. And God bless you, I think.
Just trying to not be distracting with that.
um our bodies change, right? That's like one of the magical things about being in a body, especially a female body, especially because we're cyclical. Whether you're bleeding or not, we move and change with the seasons, with the moon, with the tides. It's one of our most magical things, I think. And so I'm looking at where I'm at. I'm looking at where my community's at, because a lot of people have been with us for multiple years, 3 to 5 years. I have an original member who's been with us the whole time. Mostly after like 4 or 5 years, three years, you start working for me. um, so that's how my team keeps growing too. But yeah, there's like, so what I'm getting at is approaching 40s is different than 30s. Your body needs different things. So I'm looking at my community like, oh, this might be time to introduce different embodiments of strength growing, because our bones are changing. We've got perimenopause coming and menopause and things like that, as well as looking at the community as a whole and wondering what could serve them. So do we need a quote unquote mixed level pole class, or do we need another somatic class during the week? Do we need to move emotions more? Do we need to move our bodies more? What would be of service, and packaging it in a way that is still true to me? So if I think that like a more playful approach to pole dancing is what we need, that's the essence of what's gonna be put on the schedule. But I will call it something that is more clear than clever to people as they're signing up for it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I've noticed a lot of change, and something that I want to say too is that as you're shifting and changing, because a community, this is something I don't think people realize. A community made of people, like real living, breathing people that come physically to your space or show up physically online, is dynamic. It is
Yes.
going to constantly shift and change. And you, as the leader, should be tending to that in a way that still remains in your values and in your expertise. I think what happens is we can get a little wide, and then our expertise we can start doing shit that like other people are doing, and then at the end of the day we feel a little bit lost. But yeah, essentially I let my community guide what needs to happen next. And at the heart of that is how I'm shifting and changing as a leader as well. You know?
Yeah, it's so, and this is something so you and I, we kind of teased before that we were collaborating, and we're actually going to be launching a business coven
Yeah.
based on the fact that we've been in both been in this world and have navigated through a lot at this point. And one of the things we spoke of is that we recognize that we have a desire for something that's not out there, and that we're not looking for strategy or programming, but we're looking for like a space where we can really self-source our awakening and our wisdom. And I think that when we try to do things the way that everyone else is doing it, or the way we think we should do it, that's when we are disconnected and things aren't clicking. And so there needs to be spaces, and this is in business, but this is in movement and dance too, where we create space where people self-source their own awakening. And
Yeah.
that kind of what you were talking about, that doesn't come necessarily from linearity, and it doesn't come from follow this this program of, okay, level 1, level 2, level 3, there is a necessity for that to get foundations. So for instance,
Yes.
like I could see how that can be really valuable because we want people to learn their movement foundations. We always say like
Right.
how silly it would be if someone came to you for the first time for a movement class and you said, "Okay, move in a way that feels good to your body, freestyle." Like that's like
Yeah.
so
That's
negligent and
yeah.
so ill-advised because
Yeah.
no, they
That
don't
actually
have.
makes me angry almost.
I know because people don't have a movement vocabulary. They're not even connected. So
Well,
we
also because they're coming to you because nothing feels fucking good,
right.
you know? Like
Exactly. And so there needs to be a little bit of a entrance, a linearity to people
mm,
to acquire their foundations, but at what point do we break away from that and we give people the foundations, the solidness in themselves for them to continue to self-source their journey
yeah.
to and that is in business too, where it's like, okay, like you need to have the basis of your business set up. You need to have your values, you need to have your branding, you need to have your email founders or whatever. Like there needs to be that, but there's a point where if you're looking to grow through other people's you know systems or programs or whatever, if they're not held in a way that awakens the authenticity and uniqueness within you, it's going to feel really disconnected. And that's what we're really doing. I know both you and I through our movement modalities, and we'll have you talk about your signature offering as
Mhm.
well, because it's like we have to get people to a point where they have that grounding, those foundations, but then it's more about guiding and cultivating space for awakening, and we want that in
Yeah.
the business coven that we're doing, and we want that in our offerings, in our movement spaces. So yeah, share
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a couple things I just wrote down too is like you mentioned simplicity before. And that's actually something that is really feeling so present for me too. I notice
Mhm.
it in the way I want to eat, the way I want to move in my personal life with my fiance, and the way that I want to teach. Like there's something really beautiful to simplicity, which is actually funny if we circle back to the conversation I had the first time I took a pole class where the owner is saying everybody starts at beginner and I'm like, what do you mean? Like I want to be swinging from my pinky toe or whatever. I think there's something really beautiful and really powerful in simplicity. And you also mentioned stripping it back. Like, I don't think that this is me personally, and this is now how I teach in my space too. The first thing we shouldn't be teaching people from a pole perspective is like a spin or a turn or a body wave even. How about we remind people what their feet feel like in the floor?
Yeah.
You know, how about we cue a deep breath? So, if we do, in fact, want to, from an integrous place, claim that we're for everybody, our
Mhm.
teaching has to be really thoughtful of what that actually means. Because now you're introducing, okay, what about the emotional body, not just the physical
Mhm.
body? What about the body that comes in fragmented and has gone through trauma, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think we realize that statement holds a lot of weight and requires a lot of responsibility. And so something that I have implemented in my studio, especially because people haul ass like an hour, an hour plus. I don't know if they just had a fight with their husband, if they dropped off screaming kids, or if their boss was chewing their ass out that day, right? Like, I'm not going to come in and overwhelm and override their systems with, like, let's shake our ass, like time and place. But also, there's a reason why foreplay exists for us to, like, actually work our way into feeling pleasure, right? So for me, I I spent years doing the linear thing, probably the first 2 years of the business, like
Yeah.
beginner 1, beginner 2. This is 4 weeks. We teach a dip turn on this week. We teach a
Mhm.
fan kick on this week. And I started looking around at the bodies that were coming to my space. And I was like, oh, they all look just like me. They're young, fit, and white. This is a problem. This is a problem. Right now, I'm in like the middle of nowhere. So there, of course, we can consider our environments, but I was like, how do I actually practice and teach what I believe? And
Yeah.
so now the first fucking thing we do in a beginner class is a grounding walk. So I have everyone, this is the first time they've been in my space. There's things to smell, touch, there's even things to taste. It's like if we want to talk about sensuality and we want to talk about embodiment, we have to look at it from a whole perspective, a holistic perspective, a head to toe, and proprioceptive, like where and how are they moving in space.
Yeah.
And the next thing we do is introductions with our names and our throats. And for so many people, that is so vulnerable. It's using your voice for the first time, introducing yourself in a room full of strangers. So I've thought about these components I want to infuse in and why they're important. And then I strip it back. I go back and say, well, what's 3 steps before that? So that the gateway doesn't feel like such a nervous system spike. It can have a little bit of love and cushion before. Now, that's not always true for people, but there is methodology behind that. And it took years
Yes.
of doing things linearly to go, this ain't fucking working, or it will work for a different goal or different outcome. Yeah.
Yes. And that, I'm going to be sharing this in a newsletter that's going out that I'm talking about this and how, and this is for anyone listening of this, apply this to any area in your life
Right.
where you essentially became, people met you or know you because of a version of yourself that you've grown past.
Mm,
But like you needed that past version of yourself to become who you are. And that's a personal struggle that I'm having. And I had said in this newsletter, like, I have a friend who I'm very good friends with who is not really, does kind of experienced my work probably, and it's, 4 or 5 years ago, and doesn't really know the latest iteration of it. And when she talks of it, I know that she does not realize that, like, man, I have really put so much effort into ritualizing it, to creating like energetic pathways within it, to create it more for as an energy modality and a processing and a ritualistic modality. And she still speaks of it as she knew it. And this is, a lot of people knew it as like when Crimson would high vibe it at the studio because it's Thursday night at 8 p.m. and
right.
we're pole dancing and I need y'all to wake up, and we're like having fun and slapping our asses and hair whipping, and all that stuff was so good. And I fucking
Yeah.
love that stuff. But
Yeah.
that's not the essence of the work anymore.
Right.
Like, because I've grown beyond it. And we've all done that in relationships, in our work, in our creativity,
Yep.
in different areas of our life. And we are in a point in time where we are all really like resurrecting into a new version of ourselves, and to honor, like, but that was me. And I'm not shit talking that because it got me to where I am. And now recognizing, but like, that's not me anymore.
Yeah.
And how, and now playing with, well, is there a way to get here that didn't involve having to go through all of that? And maybe yes, maybe no. And that's kind of, I think, what a lot of us are realizing. And that's what I think we're moving through with our work right now, is
Yeah.
like, is there a way to not have to move through the masculine rigidity, linear, over linearity,
Right.
to systemization programming to get here?
I love the word rigidity because it like really does evoke like such a sensation. Like my spine feels like it like gets
Yes.
yanked. Um, and I think what you're speaking to as well is like this is why we have multiple classes within a methodology or a
Yes.
signature offering or a trademarked word that we have created in modality and whole um philosophy that we've spent decades, probably feels like honestly our whole lives. There's like parts
Yes.
of like little pieces of us from you know young teenager 20s, like I feel those parts of me coming back and landing in the more mature version of my work right now. And yeah, my signature programming is called the Embodied Way, and I think that there's light and shadow to everything, right? So if everything's so intentional and almost not heavy, but intentional and serious, and that can get shadowy. And
Yeah.
also if things are just super light and completely carefree and thoughtless, that can be super shadowy too. So finding a harmony, not a balance. Balance again is that rigid, masculine, like everything has to be equal. I like to use the word harmony, ebbs and flows. And how do these things work together so they can complement, like you mentioned, energy, so they can complement the cycles that we're in, the seasons that we're in, so that these practices can be offerings to our people and the people drawn to our work, but not an A to B to C. Otherwise, fuck it, you suck, right? Like,
Yeah. Or an expectation to start at C.
yeah, exactly. So I
Yeah.
think you and I definitely come from a place of truly serving people, even if that means the pathway is like a circular or spiral or a curve. The essence is there, and the essence has always been there, but the form changes. And people don't like when the form changes, especially if they don't want to expand or contract with it. And that's their right, But at the end of the day, then what part of that was all about external validation and what part of that was actually how you're feeding yourself?
Ooh, I think it is a journey. It's, that I do esoteric certification. We do it once a
Mm-hmm.
year, and I have an amazing group. Oh my gosh, moving through it right now. And last weekend during one of our training, one of the women said, "Well, I'm not really enjoying like choreography or things like that because I did like more of like an esoteric energetic ritual, took taking them on an intentional seated journey." And her response was, "I loved that. Like I find myself really like, why, if that's kind of the ultimate goal, why do we sometimes do choreography or breakdowns?" And I said, "The reason you like that is because you had to go through that and you've just outgrown that aspect of this work." And it's hard as someone who's like leading the work. I'm kind of outgrowing some of that. And I'm like, God, I have to do this because I know that it's a way to get there. But recognizing that there is a holistic journey unraveling, but to get to that, we do need to kind of meet ourselves at
Yeah.
the beginning.
Yeah.
So many people see, on Instagram or whatever, someone's final journey. And, we think about that as, oh my gosh, they're top of their game, winning competitions, top performers. That's the masculine way to look at it. Yeah, you got to train to get to that. But guess what? You
Yeah.
also have to, maybe training isn't the right word, but you have to immerse and devote to get to the level in your somatic practice where you're also
Right.
able to move through emotions and you're releasing past stories and you're finding like reclamation of your body and
Yep.
you're releasing past stories. That takes just as much devotion, but in a depth of self versus an expansion of self.
Well, yeah, and those external things are great. Like if you enjoy performance or the strength component, you do you, right? You and I are both advocates of like you make choices that are best for you. And this practice, movement, sensuality, finding expression, can you then have the hard conversation with your fiance?
Yeah.
Can you then not sit at a table with your in-laws while they're saying fucked up shit that you're just swallowing down? And so that's where the practice moves beyond the apparatus. I remember one time my friend Bree that I love so much, she wrote how the pull in essence to the practice is similar to the yoga mat or a bolster to yoga, right? That it's there for the deeper embodiment or for the feedback or for the aid of the practice, but it's not about either of those things at all. And, again, don't come for me because I know there's a lot of history in pole and I'm not trying to erase that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about the fitness and the sexy
Yeah.
and the physical and what's that and part that we can foster and nurture in people, because for so many of us, what has been deemed as right, good, digestible are those physical, consumable totems, especially in the day and age of Instagram where we're just putting up highlight reels left and right. You know, it fucks with you. It fucks with you. And I don't
Yeah.
want that. I don't want my clients to be like, top performers and then hate the fucking life they go back to every night.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
not the point for me.
That is ultimately, I mean, yeah, the history of pole, that's definitely not what this podcast is about. And
No.
everything needs progress. Like, to think that something needs to stay solid in a moment of time is kind of unreasonable, right? So
Yeah.
I love that it's being expanded upon in greater exploration, right? And how can it serve beyond what it once was? And yeah, the point of our work, I know you and I can speak for us both, is that it's not supposed to just serve you while you are in the movement or the
Mm.
studio or the expression itself. It's meant for internal transformation. And as is within, so is without. As we can find that internal shift, that's when we see change in our external world. And
Mhm.
so there is, I guess, the different qualities of movement, right? Is this for inner transformation or outer transformation?
Yep.
And we always say the feminine movement is like, it's the moon, it's the subconscious, it's the enigmatic, it's the unknown, it's the emotions, it's the energetic qualities. And that's what makes it, it's the non-linear. And that's what it makes it a feminine practice. And to me, that's mysticism and
Mm.
spirituality as well. That's a difference between religion, where it tells you this is the dogmatic way, this is what we believe, this is what you do, this is how you get there, versus to me, like a spiritual mysticism, which is like we're swimming in a sea of the unknown.
Yeah. And I think what happens in our culture and the Western world is that these practices that were probably originally for that, for
Yeah.
spirituality, for connection, for calling in rain for crops,
Yeah.
they become dogmatic. And then it's like you must hold this pose in your Lululemon and point your toe until
Uh-huh.
you cramp. And if you don't have bruises, are you training hard enough on this new trick? Like, it's just these weird things that we attest to success because maybe we can just visually see them, or maybe it's because it becomes another way that we can fucking ignore them, ignore the shit that actually needs tending to, which is whatever, fill in the blank. But also, you know, goddess forbid that we do anything for purely the fuck of it, to enjoy it, to experience it, to enact joy, to embody pleasure and curiosity, and it not have an end goal game.
Right. Yeah. If it's not productive.
Yeah. God, like, we don't know how to play as adults, and movement at its very interim offering, I think, is so playful, both how you deliver movement and invite people to engage in it, and same with me. It's like there's a playful component that is also wildly expansive that does not always get the love and attention that it could, that adults could use.
Yeah, I was going to say, without the infantilization of
Yes.
femmes, where it's like, oh, we're like, what does, because that's what I'm something like, I want some grown ass people.
Mhm.
This work is for the grown ups, the ones who are ready to have like the more adult conversations, to move beyond the comfortability, to recognize their greater potential. And to me, that actually, if you think about it, it does require a journey through childhood and through younger essences of ourselves. So,
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we're bringing into this next collaboration together,
yeah,
is that I know I have been, I know you have been, and I know we have been together, have been parts of programs that have been wildly beneficial for both of us. And
yeah,
I think I've also put myself in certain environments and even quote unquote programming where I'm like, this isn't for me. This doesn't work for my brain. It doesn't work for my values. Um, so you and I coming together to create an environment where people can be accountable for themselves and have the support that allows that to be pleasurable and not like punishment, you
and not
know?
like go do what feels good. It's the same thing as movement. Like, there needs to be a container, there needs to be
Yeah.
prompting, there needs to be guidance.
Yeah. And experience. You and I together have like what, probably 30 years of experience together, 40 years, depending on what timelines we're going on, from our artistic collegiate careers to the businesses that we've owned. Like, we got some fucking experience up in this bitch, both virtually and physically in person through brick and mortars and online services. And I don't know about you, but I have learned a hell of a lot. And I love to work backwards too. I love to see things that don't work for me or don't work for my clients, and then really wonder, okay, this conceptually is needed and necessary, especially in the health of a business or an ecosystem or whatever. And how do we approach it, embody it from a place that is centering sensuality, expression, love, wealth from a new defined place. So yeah, these are the things that I know light us both up a little bit, and I'm so excited that we're diving into this together, because I know that this shit is going to be so valuable for so many people.
Yeah, we've had some really rich conversations. For those who don't know, Emily and I first met in a coaching group.
Yeah.
So, a few episodes ago, you'll see that I interviewed Leslie Lyons, and she was actually, that's how I know Leslie. She was my coach. She was Emily's coach.
Yep.
I started with her in 2018. I think you joined in 2020.
Yep, 2020. I love her. I love that woman so much. She
Yeah.
legitimately changed my life.
Yeah, same. And so we understand like how powerful having like a coaching container can be. And we learned so much from her, and so much that we gained from that was that balance of what we're offering, which is like not telling you what to do, but giving you wisdom that we've experienced. But then, there is, I think there's so much value of being in rooms with like minded people and people with a little more experience or different
Yep.
experience. And I see the value in that, but I also, what I have come to find in like other explorations is, beyond, is that there's certain levels of business coaching that aren't based in somatics or
Yeah.
embodiment, or for me, what I'm bringing to the container is mysticism. And so
Yeah.
when I can use my mystical practices to actually awaken my authenticity, when I am showing up as my authentic self and then like channeling that into creative expression, that's when I'm at my best. And that's when the work works, not when we're trying to, you'll see these coaches being like, I got the 10-step program. And if you do
Right.
exactly what I do, and we've all probably fallen for that before. And it's like, why does this feel weird? And it's like, well, that's not really aligned with your energetic imprint or your intention or where you are with your work. So like, there's not a one size fit all. And that's kind of what it comes down to in movement and business and everything. There's not one thing that works for everyone, but you need to have the space to be able to self discover.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what was really beneficial for me too, by the way, something that worked for me that I didn't know at the time, because I was so young and so green and just so hungry and so scared, I think too, those first few years of business are terrifying.
Oh my
Layer
gosh.
on top of fucking pandemic. But what I loved about being in that coaching container was the connections that I made, obviously, between you and I, and we're still really good friends with some of the other humans in that space, and that there was guidance and accountability from a place of let's really be honest about this. Let's be honest about your numbers. Let's be honest about how you're feeling. Let's be honest about the clients you're serving. And not that necessarily those will be the specifics that we're going through. They may if they show up, right? But leading from value, leading from authenticity, leading from an embodied place, all things that are kind of buzzy in
Yes.
the pop culture space, from people, you and I, who have been in and out and through and around. Like, you moved your whole business and changed your model. Like, I have gone from online to in studio, now back to online, and I'm serving people like us. So there's just a wealth of wisdom from a truly lived place that is not A to B to C, not a 10-step framework.
Yeah.
And listen, I love me some framework. Sometimes that shit, we need that shit.
Yes.
And 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 my guess is if you're like us, like you and I, those of you listening, and your nips are perking a little bit or you're leaning into this conversation, it's because you see the world differently too. You learn differently, you feel differently, you speak differently, you want to do things in your business differently, you want to serve people from a more wholehearted place or something that you don't see in your industry or in the market, or you're fucking sick of the shit that's not been working for you too, you know? And I think it's a good time to remind people that there's so many different definitions of success. And to me, success is it's Wednesday at 1 p.m. and you and I can have a juicy conversation. And I am not worried about what's on my phone, what's in my, what is in or isn't in my bank account. Like, it's just, there's so much liberation around the way that we can build and grow as humans, as leaders and business owners that I think often get left out of the conversation.
Yeah, we've had conversations about this, redefining wealth, and
Mm-hmm.
reimagining success and things like that. And I think that there's been a prevalent, I mean, we're coming out of an era of hustle culture where
Yep.
that, and hustle worked. It worked for a lot of people. It's not going to work anymore. Spoiler
Yep.
from an energetic and astrological perspective. Those of us who depend on our hustle for success are going to be very shocked to find that that's not working anymore. And there's probably a lot of confusion with people with that. And so we're here recognizing that and creating alternatives. However, there was also always a lot of messaging around, well, you want to be $1 million business owner, or you want to be that. And we've had this conversation, and I'm like, I really don't need $1 million to be a year to be successful. Like maybe some people do, but I don't think that gives me a lack of wealth consciousness. It's not like,
Mm.
oh, you have damaged beliefs around your wealth because you don't want to make $1 million a year. Like, no, I just literally don't need it. And like, that's not my definition of wealth. Like,
Right.
my definition of wealth is definitely requires me to make money. I live in capitalism, and it requires me
We
to,
have mortgages.
we have mortgages. I got land to uphold, and so that's the reality. And I need to charge my worth. And because of that, we'll have conversations around that. But it's not $1 million a year. And so people may think that they're like failures in business because they're not reaching the 7-figure mark. And it's like, I don't know if that's really necessary for a lot of people. For a lot of people, it's like, can I live comfortably and
Yeah.
realistically? And can that mean that I don't have the expenses of someone that maybe requires that amount, right? So yeah, redefining what success is. But if you're always in an echo chamber of
Mm.
biz culture that's telling you that success is money, or it's a number, or it's quantifiable, and it's this standard, that's gonna be confusing. And that's not, and but we are still gonna also not be in a, well, you don't need to charge because
Yeah.
your gifts are to the universe. And that's not,
Yeah.
listen, I called my mortgage company, they're not accepting high vibes this month. And so
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Oh my God. You just
yeah,
like, instead of putting a check in the mail for whatever you owe, you just write like a loving note that says
yes,
good vibes only. I fucking wish that would work. That would be a nice
I
world to
know.
live in. That
It's
would be
like
a
we're
nice
playing
world.
the cards we're dealt. We're changing paradigms, so we also have to exist within it. And
Well,
you and I
yeah.
have definitely, we have to give a shout out to our coach Adi as well, because
Yep.
we've invested in some high level coaching, and have had some wonderful experiences, and that's what's gotten us here. And this is just an evolution.
Yeah. And I love that you shouted her out too, because wow, we have so many things that intersect us.
Yeah.
But and here's the perfect example too, right? Like when Ati came into my life or I came into hers and I watched her on stage, it again spoke to something in me in a similar way that first pole class did. And like, oh, I didn't know this was possible. Oh, I didn't know you could address a room of business owners and say the F word every other word and talk about how passionate you are about elevating voices. And I was like, damn, I've been kind of out here in no man's land for a little bit by myself because our first coach, she took a break, and I was just kind of floating around like, oh, I'll try to figure this shit out by myself for a while. And the time that I met Ati was like the perfect timing, because she spoke to new creases and crevices in me as a business owner and a leader that I like to identify with, that I didn't even know were there. Like,
You
not even
don't know.
shined a flashlight into the shadows. Like, I literally didn't even know that they were pathways of possibility. And that's what we're talking about, getting in the right rooms and being guided by the right people. Because maybe it's not a return on your investment in a dollar form, but I'm going to Detroit next week because someone invited me to speak on their stage in front of 300 women. And that is
Yes.
not something I ever could have visualized, thought of, said full body yes to, be rooted in this conversation, discussing it, like not anxious about it. Like, this is the wealth we're talking about too. And that will lead to other things that will feed certain parts of different definitions of wealth for me, I'm sure. But what does wealth mean for us in this season? That's something
Yes.
I'm always curious about for people.
And
Because I've also, oh, go ahead.
can you say Adi's last name, just because I'm trying to like give, and I know I can't say it.
Grinspun.
Greenspun. Yes. So if
Grinspun.
anyone's looking up,
And
because we had Leslie Lyons and,
yeah, Ati, I think her handle is ATG. I forget, but yeah, she says it with this beautiful accent. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, like redefining success, wealth, what is authentic, what is alignment? Like that sounds like hell to me. Traveling to speak on stages, like no interest in it. But like I know that that's where your path is heading and mine's heading in a different direction. And yeah, I just feel so lucky to have met you. And I know this conversation was kind of all over the place, but that's kind of the nonlinearity of the feminine. And I hope that people listening, whether they are, business owners or new to movement or longtime movement enthusiasts or just witches or whatever, we're able to relate to like our journey of it. Truly, we've been on a journey of self discovery
Yeah.
together. And hopefully that translates to whatever journey of self discovery they're moving through, because we're all layered. We're going through these in our relationships, as we said, in our creativity, in our movement, in our emotional journey, in our healing, and all of that. And like, if anything, this is the conversations that need to happen, which is that it's nonlinear and that it requires a certain self-sourcedness to it, that being in the right spaces matter, being intentional matters. And we've, I think, gotten really clear on like what we want to create, because where we see served us the most
Mm-hmm.
in the movement, in our movement modalities, in the embodied way, in esotericism, we see from a bird's eye view, oh shit, this was what the most essential part of it was, that we're stripping back and wanting to bring to the world, that we want to focus on. And in our business, this is where we found the success, and this is where we wasted our time and effort.
Yeah. Yeah. And that could be different from person to person.
Yeah.
It's good to have someone who's walked through it. I'm never the person that's sitting up in the nosebleeds looking down at the arena going, you should do this, you should do this. I'm down there getting my fucking ass kicked and with a bloody nose looking at you going, you know what, maybe don't try this one. Like, maybe don't try
Right.
this one. And so yeah, how do we bring all the versions of success that we want to lean into going into the next season of our lives and our businesses, the next fiscal year? And for me, something that I believe is that how our bodies express and how they move and how they feel is way more valuable than how they look.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true for business too, is like you could have all of the filters, you can have the curated Instagram, you can have the brand colors, but if what's going on behind it, behind the spreadsheet, is you just dragging your body along, then what the fuck are we doing? And so that's the component I'm going to bring into our container too, through somatic leadership and practices that allow us to expand from a perspective that's not just necessarily up. We can get wide, and what will that do from us? So yeah, it's something I wish I had, or we did have, like Boss was like amazing. She
Yeah.
had all the things. So
Yeah.
she really set us up for success in so many ways. Um, but what I'm seeing in these events that I get to go to and talk to business owners like us is that if you don't have an existing movement practice, especially a pleasure centered nonlinear one, it's what's missing from your capacity and your expansion and your ability to receive and then live in that from like a gratitude space and not one that's like, what should I be doing next? That's fucking soul shifting too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the work you're going to be bringing into the business coven. And I have to say that I did a 4-week online program with you last month, and it was me midday taking 75 minutes to go through a practice with you that was included movement. So spoiler, y'all, there will be movement in it. And don't say, I do movement. I don't want, I need you to, if you're expecting to show up and be like, this is 75 minutes of hardcore training in terms of just information that you can now get for free off of anything, like this is not the space. But being I got so much out of that. It was just so expansive for me. It was so, I do this work, but we guides need our own guides.
Yeah.
And I awoken to just like these knowings and these wisdoms. And yeah, that could not have been conveyed in a talk conversation.
Yeah.
That being said, we're also going to be having discussion and talk
Yeah.
conversations, and
100%.
something that I'm going to be bringing is a more mystical perspective. We're going to be talking about the astrological energies. We're going to be using more mystical techniques. You don't need to be rooted in that world for it to work. And I'm bringing I've been in branding and since I graduated college in 2002, right? So
Let's
I have,
go.
yeah. And so it's been a long ass time working in branding and marketing and messaging and all of that, and then creating my own business. And so I have such an interest in creative expression through authenticity. And so I'm going to be weaving, new paradigm business and branding wisdom in with the mysticism during my week.
Yeah. I
Just so
love
people
that.
kind of have a little idea what to expect.
Yeah, and we'll give you guys all the details. We're gonna drop a priority list link. It's gonna be all over all the things where you can find us. I think you made a good point too. Like those of us that naturally gravitate towards tending to others, so service providers, therapists, somatic practitioners, wellness professionals, artists, all of us have this kind of like thread that weaves us. And I would imagine you get lit up about your work like we do, and or you don't, and that's definitely why you need us. But but either way, that you're maybe more comfortable or more used to pouring out, showing up for others, maybe even just as the matriarch in your household. So this space is really going to be a place to be held in that natural gifting and magic that you already possess. It's already led you to where you are. Sometimes it's really good to learn from people that are just a couple steps ahead of you, alongside of you. That's a really beautiful thing, actually, that Ati said in that first speech when I listened to her on stage. Is she was talking about imposter syndrome and that you're not an imposter. Like if you're just 2 steps ahead of someone, you care. You care. You're not an imposter. You just care because there's always going to be someone 2 steps behind you. And so if you're listening to us and you're like, I think this is for me, where do I lay in this? Just know that there's also someone behind you that you will get to serve. And to
Yeah.
me, that shit lights me up. That ripple effect
Yeah.
lights me up. And that's why it's so important to me to lead with these values, with the feminine, with the erotic, with the sensual, with the creative. That's how we change shit. Yeah.
Yes, to me, that's the new paradigm we're stepping into. And so rooting into these practices, not just in what we offer, but how we live and how we invest in ourselves.
Yep.
As an extension of how we invest in our business. Yeah. So we'll put all the things in the link below. But Man, we have been chitty chatty. And
Yeah, I love
so
it.
I would love to lead us into our final questions, which
All
also
right.
I'm going to also encourage you to weave any more wisdom or insight that comes up throughout it. But Emily, what is your daily mantra or favorite quote or source of inspiration?
Ooh, okay. First thing that comes up for me is actually something that I heard when I was building the studio in those months where I just pretty much cried every day because we didn't know what was happening in the world. Have you ever seen have you ever seen the movie Field of Dreams?
A long time ago.
Yeah, it's old. It's like, I don't know, from the 80s or the 90s. But there's this ongoing like thing that he hears, and it's if you build it, they will come. And so that's something that I always circle back to, even unintentionally, especially if I'm in one of those like doubt spaces, like, oh, is anybody gonna like this? Is this gonna be for anyone? You know, the we happens to me too. I get in those places and they're a lot more curious and kind than they used to be. But yeah, if you build it, they will come. And that shit has been true. Every time I fully lean into that something that feels aligned, enjoyable, of service to people from an integrous and resource place, when I try to build shit when I'm fried, that shit don't work either. So yeah, if you build it, they will come.
Do you know that's a Mandela effect, that's not actually what they said in the movie?
Wait, what?
I have a feeling some people were listening to that and were like, that's a Mandela effect. Do you know what a Mandela effect is?
No.
They're like concepts of like moments in time that we collectively remember as a truth that is no longer a truth. And it's like this belief that like, oh, that was like times when the earth has split. It's so silly. I will go look up, but I believe that is a Mandela effect, and that it's like that actually when you look back it's not what he said, but we all collectively remember that's not to take away, that's the essence of what is said, right? But we'll have to explore that after. We'll have to go to the Googles. But
Wait, no, I'm pretty sure that was what was said throughout that movie. It's the voice.
it's the whole point of the whole movie.
Fuck. Well, I don't know what kind of effect it is, but it's the same shit I tell myself when I'm having hard
Yes,
days.
it
It still
doesn't
works.
matter. But if you do the Mandela effect, if you build it, they will come. Let's see. The Field of Dreams 1989 quote, widely remembered as if you build it, they will come, is actually if you build it, he will come.
Oh, and it's talking about his dad.
Maybe, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I had to bring that up because I know that some people that listen to this are into Mandela effect and things like that. And it's just like
Wow.
such an, I mean, this is why I also love kind of tinfoil hat type of stuff. But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
why do we always remember? Like, it's not mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? It's magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Yeah, there's a whole
What?
bunch of Mandela effects. And it all stems from this idea that when Nelson Mandela died, a lot of people
Mm.
were like, he already died. And people were so confused, like, no, he already died. I remember him dying. And they were like, no, he's been alive. And so there's this like, conspiracy
Wow.
world around all different Mandela effects. We're like, no, we all collectively remember, like, it's not you remember the Berenstein Bears?
Yeah, it's Bernstein, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a Mandela effect that people. I remember asking my mom about that one. She's like, "No, I remember it's the Berenstein Bears," and I was like, "No, it's not."
Wow.
And she's like, "No, it is," because she wasn't understanding what I was trying to tinfoil hat her. But yeah. So anyway, that was one of the Mandela effects.
Holy fuck. Okay. This is also why you and I working together is so fun because we constantly teach each other new things.
I bring the dumb shit, but yes. If you build it, I like to say, if you build it, they will come. And but in the right cultivation, right? Like
Yeah.
cultivating it with your magic. So okay, on to the next question before this goes to even more weird extreme. So what what is your favorite sensuous indulgence?
Ooh. I love loose leaf tea. So I'll spend the extra money for like a brand like Magic Hour that comes in this beautiful violet, apothecary jar. But I have to say, at this stage in my life, I don't withhold things that I want to enjoy. It's very rare that I will weigh, I have my own budgeting system, but as someone who came from a very scarce upbringing and hustled her way through college working 3 jobs, that is definitely a way that I show myself gratitude. Like, for example, I just got my car detailed yesterday to kick off Q2, and that feels so luxurious to me. So, practices and moving intention, money, energy, however you want to put that, into things that make me feel like, yeah, that was a good choice. That made my life more enjoyable.
I
Yeah.
love that. That's some magic you'll be bringing to the business coven too, which is, I think, something that is such a gift that you bring that you probably don't even realize. So,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Okay, final question. What does it mean for you to live in your dark feminine magic?
Ooh. I'm a Scorpio sister, so
Yeah.
I've always had that dark, twisty shit going on for me. But you know what? I think I used to hide it. I think I was like, I tried to be good for most of my life. I came again from just like the backdrop of my early years of childhood was like a very messy divorce. I never wanted to be difficult. I never wanted to be challenging. I never wanted to challenge anyone. Still, sometimes like conflict makes my body do wild things. But what I've learned through dark feminine practices and honoring goddesses and that type of energy through movement is like, oh, first of all, this is a part of us entirety, so we can't ignore it. Like the dark feminine is something that you cannot ignore. It's also wildly vital for us as women to tap into those aspects, because those in particular are the ones that have gotten shoved down our throats and force fed as bad, wrong, and dirty.
Yeah.
So I think that the dark feminine has been like on my shoulder my entire life, but I just kind of was like, no,
Yeah.
no. And now I'm like, oh yeah, let's fucking go. You know? Yeah.
I love it. So not ignoring it, not no
Yeah.
longer falling to that purity good girl programming, which is like, blah, barf, yeah.
Yeah, because you know what? I was good externally, but like to myself, I wasn't really that good. I was always sleeping with the wrong people. I was treating myself like shit. I was making my body, like I was pushing my body to the extremes. So I was maybe even engaging with some of those practices, but in a very harmful way. And so now in this stage of my life, things that light me up and have always been an innate part of me, I've always been a super sexual being. Like that's not something that feels new to me, but what does feel new in this stage of my life, probably from my mid to late 20s to now, is that energy I use for love and growth and expansion rather than like self-harm, that I
Mhm.
subconsciously probably didn't realize that I was living so far in the depths of the shadows of that shit.
Ugh. So, I mean, that's kind of the essence of our work, is destigmatizing that and reclaiming it from a more empowered perspective. So I love that we have to live through it. We have to live through
Yeah.
it.
And maybe not give it away so much, like
Mhm.
I think the things that we're afraid of, maybe, and this can tie back to how we maybe even manage our money, is like these things that we start to gain, embody, like are in front of, we can like give it away. We're like, ugh, reject, 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 reject. But once we
Mhm.
start to integrate, we not only relax into it, I'll just speak for myself. Like I've learned how to relax into it, and that alone is expansion.
Mm, I love it.
Hmm.
Emily, anything else you want to share? And let's also make sure we know how to people can get, I always put all your stuff in the note,
Yeah.
but like what would you like to share or end on, or
I think that something that's lighting me up lately too is really looking at what the next 6 months, 5 years look like, whatever, back in the long form connection creativity game. So podcasts, writing. I just wrote a chapter in a book that's going to come out in September, and that was such a like a like, how do I want to say this? A shocking reminder of how fragmented I have been putting my thinking and my intelligence, trying to shove it into characters and carousels, like that has been, and reels, like, you know, hooks and shit like that. That has been wildly eye-opening to circle back to these like longer form parts of myself that really are who I am and how I like to connect with people and how I like to serve people. But we've had to like format and form them in a way that has actually, like, in my opinion, created disconnection. So yeah, I think for now, finding me on Instagram is great. And I'm moving towards more sustainable, longer form practices, whether that be finally finishing that damn book. I know you too, or YouTube or newsletters. I'm getting curious about what's most service to people who are drawn to working with me or learning about my perspectives or how I can support them. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I love that. It's like true. Yeah, I've been on that. We'll talk about that in the business coven because I've been rejecting a lot of the Instagram and all of that recently because it's just I go through phases with it and sometimes I'm like I love it and then right now I'm not it doesn't not I'm not wasting my time, but I'm
Yep.
always inconsistent with my newsletters and just started an esoerotic Substack and yeah, this podcast I want to devote more to, which is why we're doing this. So yeah, I agree. There's an intimacy, there's a depth of self. It feels very dark feminine to have
Mhm.
smaller. We talked about this, like we see the future is very more, it's more intimate. It's smaller and more intimate in terms of containers and when it comes to who we're speaking to, our communities in like the best way, you know,
Yeah.
not in a like lack way, in like an expansive way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can't help but imagine what that would do for our bodies that are definitely, you know, with the world around us going through a contraction too. It's like you got to meet yourself where you're at. I think that's probably too why sometimes the thought of starting something new is so overwhelming because it's
Mm.
either a super full class or you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So, intimacy is definitely going to be a value added to what we create going forward. And that looks like the way that we'll have conversations and care for those in our container, and also just the general structure and amount of bodies that are in a space to connect with.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it, Emily. I could talk with you
I
all
know.
day,
I know.
but we've been going. And
We've been
so
going.
we thank everyone who has been listening to us or potentially watching and for just tuning in and stay in touch with us. All the links are in the show notes. And Emily, it's just such an honor to consider you my biz bestie.
Yes.
You have united and journeyed. We've gone through so much together and I'm just so excited for what we're co-creating moving forward. So thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast. And if you're listening to this, Emily's launching a podcast. What's the name of it?
Sex, life, and business.
Sex, Life, and Business. She's launching that in May, and I'll be on that one at some point. So yay,
Yes. Thank
Emily,
you.
I love you.
I love you so much. Thank you so much. This is just so juicy, so fun. I'm so excited for what's next.
Absolutely. All right. Thank y'all. Stay in your magic. Bye. Thank you for joining. Follow me on Instagram at crimson.minx and visit esoerotic.com to learn to live more fully and unapologetically in your magnetic power, sensual pleasure, and unlimited creative potential.